For 6 years, Susan Boyle was silent. No performances, no stages, just a sudden disappearance that left fans wondering if they had already seen the last of her. Then came the news no one expected. After suffering a stroke in 2022 that left part of her face paralyzed and her voice barely recognizable, many believed her career was over for good. But now, something has changed. Simon Cowell has made a bold move. He wants Susan Boyle back for one of the biggest seasons of Britain's Got Talent ever. And that raises a question no one can ignore. Can she really return to the stage after everything she's been through? And what exactly happened between that hospital bed and this moment now? Let's find out. The early life of Susan Boyle. Susan Boyle was born on April 1st, 1961, in Blackburn, West Lothian, Scotland, the youngest of 9 children in a modest, faith-filled home. Her mother, Bridget, was 47 when she became pregnant and was warned the risks could cost her life. But she refused to give up the child. When Susan was born, complications led to a lack of oxygen, and doctors made a devastating mistake. They told the family she had brain damage. That label followed her for decades. In school, she was mocked and called names like Susie Simple. Teachers didn't always step in, and the misunderstanding shaped how people treated her. For years, Susan felt something wasn't right. But it wasn't until 2012, at age 51, that she was correctly diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. By then, she had already spent a lifetime proving others wrong. Despite the struggles, there was always one constant in her life: music. Her father, Patrick, loved to sing, and their small home was often filled with song. Susan found comfort there. By age 12, she was singing in school and church choirs, where she finally felt seen. Music became her escape, her confidence, and her voice in a world that often tried to silence her. As she grew older, she kept chasing that dream. In the 1990s, she trained with vocal coach Fred O'Neill, building the discipline behind her powerful voice. But life wasn't easy. After caring for her mother through years of illness, Susan lost her in 2007, and for a time, she stopped singing altogether. Still, the dream never fully left. Even after a failed audition in 1995 that went nowhere, something inside her refused to give up. She didn't know it yet, but her moment was still coming. The moment that changed everything. In 1998, at 37, Susan used her own savings to record a demo at a small studio in Scotland. She sang classics like Cry Me a River, Killing Me Softly, and Don't Cry for Me Argentina, then mailed the recordings to record labels and TV shows. No one replied. The silence was discouraging. A year later, she paid to have one song included on a small charity CD that barely reached a few hundred people. By 2000, at 39, she began to feel the dream slipping away. She remained in Blackburn, singing in church and at small local events, holding on to hope even as it slowly faded. Then, in 2008, everything shifted. At 47, she auditioned for Britain's Got Talent in Glasgow, determined to honor her late mother who had always believed in her. On April 11th, 2009, she walked onto the stage in a simple dress, facing a skeptical crowd and judges including Simon Cowell. When she said she wanted to be as successful as Elaine Paige, people laughed. No one expected what came next. As soon as she began singing I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, the room changed. The laughter disappeared. Her voice was powerful, emotional, impossible to ignore. By the end, the entire audience was on its feet. That single audition, watched by millions, spread across the internet within days, turning an unknown woman into a global sensation almost overnight. Her debut album, I Dreamed a Dream, was released later that year and became a massive success, selling millions worldwide. Although she finished second on the show, the world already saw her as the true winner. But fame came at a cost. The sudden attention, media pressure, and constant scrutiny became overwhelming. After the finale, she struggled with exhaustion and anxiety and was briefly hospitalized to recover. Paparazzi surrounded her home, and her quiet life was gone. Still, she kept going, releasing music, performing globally, and achieving what once seemed impossible. From viral moment to global phenomenon. Susan Boyle's rise didn't slow down after that first unforgettable audition. It only grew bigger. On April 11, 2009, the 47-year-old from Blackburn stepped onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent and stunned the world with I Dreamed a Dream. Within months, the clip had spread across the internet, eventually reaching hundreds of millions of viewers and turning her into a global name almost overnight. Just 7 months later, in November 2009, she released her debut album I Dreamed a Dream, and the success was immediate. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, selling over 700,000 copies in its first week in the United States alone, outperforming even major artists at the time. At nearly 49 years old, Susan became one of the oldest artists to achieve such a milestone with a debut release. The numbers kept climbing. By early 2010, the album had sold millions of copies worldwide, dominating charts across more than 40 countries. What started as a moment of doubt on stage had turned into one of the biggest music success stories of the decade. The same woman who had once been underestimated was now breaking records and redefining expectations in the industry. And it didn't stop there. In 2010, she released The Gift, which also debuted at #1, followed by Someone to Watch Over Me in 2011. With each release, she proved her success wasn't a one-time miracle. Susan Boyle had become a lasting force in music, something few could have predicted when she first walked onto that stage. Understanding the woman behind the voice. Over the years, Susan Boyle's success continued to grow. By 2021, she had sold around 25 million records across 7 studio albums, with I Dreamed a Dream, The Gift, and Someone to Watch Over Me leading the way. She earned Grammy nominations and international awards, proving her impact went far beyond that first audition. But behind the success, there was pressure, especially after a stroke in 2022 that forced her to step away from performing. Years earlier, another revelation had already changed how she understood her own life. In 2013, at 52, Susan shared that she had Asperger's syndrome. For decades, she had been wrongly told she had brain damage from birth, a label that shaped how people treated her and how she saw herself. She had grown up feeling different, often isolated, especially while living quietly in Blackburn and caring for her mother until her passing in 2007. The truth came after she sought help in 2012. Tests showed she had an above-average IQ, completely contradicting what she had been told as a child. Doctors explained that her challenges came from autism-related traits, difficulty with social cues, anxiety, and feeling overwhelmed under pressure. When she spoke publicly about it, there was a sense of relief. For the first time, things made sense. Looking back, it also explained what happened during her rise on Britain's Got Talent in 2009. The sudden fame, constant attention, and intense schedule had pushed her beyond her limits, leading to exhaustion and emotional strain after the finale. At the time, few understood, but later, the picture became clearer. The diagnosis didn't change her journey, but it gave it meaning. It helped people see her not as someone who struggled without reason, but as someone who had quietly faced challenges and still achieved something extraordinary, the life she didn't expect. Despite her extraordinary success, there were parts of life that never turned out the way Susan Boyle had once hoped. She often spoke about not having children as her deepest regret. She loved being around kids and had imagined building a family of her own, but that dream never came true. After dedicating years to caring for her mother until her passing in 2007, she found herself holding on to a quiet sense of something missing. At one point, she even considered becoming a foster parent, believing she could offer children a safe and loving home. But the plan was not approved, partly due to concerns about her condition and the pressures of fame. The decision left her disappointed, and that feeling stayed with her over the years. Romance, too, was rare. A brief connection with a doctor she met in 2014 brought a flicker of hope, but it quietly faded, becoming the only relationship she ever spoke about publicly. Through it all, she remained grounded. Despite earning millions, she never strayed far from her roots. She continued returning to her childhood home in Blackburn, a modest place filled with memories, choosing familiarity over luxury. It was where she felt most like herself. Then, in April 2022, everything changed overnight. One evening, she felt completely fine. By the next morning, she had suffered a stroke. One side of her face had weakened, her speech was slurred, and her voice, the very thing that had defined her life, was suddenly fragile. Doctors warned the damage could be permanent. At 60, she found herself in a hospital bed, facing the terrifying possibility of losing her voice forever. For someone who had spent her life fighting to be heard, the silence was overwhelming. But even then, she refused to give up. Within days, she began rehabilitation, holding on to one belief. If something had been taken from her, she would fight to get it back. The fight to find her voice again. The doctor's words were devastating. Susan Boyle's stroke had left her left side weak, her face unresponsive, and her voice barely working. Specialists warned she might never sing again. For someone whose entire life revolved around music, even saying simple words became a struggle. The same voice that had once filled arenas now felt like it might be gone for good. Tests showed the damage was serious and recovery odds were low. Lying in that hospital bed, she was forced to face an uncertain future, not just emotionally but financially too, as performing had always been her stability. But instead of giving in, she made a decision. She would fight. After leaving the hospital in May 2022, she began an intense recovery routine. She worked with a speech therapist several times a week and practiced daily for hours. Vocal exercises, mirror training, and repetition became part of her life. Slowly, month by month, her strength began to return. By early 2023, her speech had improved, and in a quiet, emotional moment, she sang again for the first time since the stroke. The real breakthrough came on June 3, 2023, when she returned to the stage of Britain's Got Talent, exactly 14 years after her original audition, performing I Dreamed a Dream. Once again, she revealed to the audience that she had suffered a stroke and had spent over a year fighting to come back. The crowd rose in a powerful standing ovation. It was more than a performance. It was a victory. By 2025, she took another step forward, returning to the recording studio after 6 years away. Against all expectations, she was making music again. What once seemed impossible had become real because she refused to let her story end in silence. A comeback no one saw coming. Later that year, Susan Boyle began speaking openly about her stroke and the long fight to recover, admitting it had changed her, but also made her stronger. She often credited her manager, Geraldine, for helping her through the hardest moments, and slowly, public appearances and recognition marked her return. Despite everything she had been through, she spoke about the future with renewed energy, even joking that nothing could keep her down. As 2026 approached, the signs of a full comeback became impossible to ignore. In early February, Simon Cowell revealed plans for a major anniversary season of Britain's Got Talent and made it clear he wanted Susan back. He reminded audiences how her very first audition had transformed the show and turned her into a global star overnight. The idea of her return quickly reignited excitement. Fans remembered her emotional comeback performance in 2023 and now began imagining what could come next. When the anniversary season aired, her story became a central focus, revisiting the moment that changed everything and highlighting the journey that followed, from global success to personal struggle, and now recovery. But her comeback wasn't limited to television. She announced plans to perform live again, including an appearance at the Summer's End Angus Festival in August 2026, her first major festival in years. For someone who had once been told she might never sing again, standing on a stage in front of thousands felt almost unreal. At the same time, she returned to the recording studio, sharing updates with fans and hinting at new music. Photos, short messages, and quiet moments behind the microphone began to rebuild anticipation. By the end of 2025, it was clear. This wasn't just a return, it was a new beginning. Susan Boyle's story had come full circle. From doubt to global fame, from silence to recovery, she had rebuilt what once seemed lost, and proved that some voices are simply too strong to fade away. But now the biggest question remains. Can she truly return to the level that once stunned the world? Or will this new chapter take her somewhere completely different? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you want more powerful stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on Susan Boyle and other your beloved stars. See you next time.